this dark time, and I'm going to read this as we close from this book, which you can see is well-traveled, mine. I nursed from this book. It's called Closing the Gap. Closing the Gap. How many of you have read this? Just by show of hand. Don't feel bad if you haven't. Those of you who've never seen it, this is a compilation of what you call interviews, but they're really, as the cover says, inner views of the heart, mind, and soul of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Why do we need to know about his heart, mind, and soul? Because he's the man who God is pleased with. He's the apple of God's eye. How could you say that? Look at him. Look at him. Here's a man who stands in the face of the most powerful nation in the world and defies them, not just to be some bold, arrogant man, because thus saith the Lord. You see what they over there doing to Gaddafi, our brother? They ain't done nothing to them. You don't think they're angry with a man like Farrakhan who condemns their injustice and inequity to their face? How come they can't do nothing to him? You need to think about this. Think about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, a black man coming up in Georgia in the 30s and 40s when black men and women, Mexicans, everyone was being lynched by white people just for looking the wrong way at white people. In the 30s, the man stands up and says, "You are the devil." I want you to think about this. And there was no army of FOI back then. There were some of his own family who wanted to kill him. The man coming up out of the valley, he wasn't even out of the valley yet. He was just starting to get cleaned up. But God said, "Tell them, thus saith the Lord." He called them devils, the blue-eyed devils, to their face. And they had to escort him down to the Uline Arena in 1959 in Washington, D.C. Think on this. You have boot-licking Negro and Chicano leaders who try to do everything they can to please the enemy, and they still got killed. Here's a man with no army, no weapon, who said, "You're the devil, the real devil in person." And God in person taught me this. And he told me that we are God and you are the devil. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Nobody touched him. I want you to think on this. All praise is due to Allah. See, we need to have that boldness, not just for the sake of exhilaration. This is exciting to know. Yes, this is invincible truth. Yes, you try to get along with them. You said you believed in their Jesus, and they still kicked you out of their churches. To hell with a people like that. You can't represent Christ, welcome me to faith, and then tell me, but you can't come in here. All praises due to Allah. They say we're haters, but right here you got Mexican, you got Cubans, you got Puerto Ricans. You got white people. We don't allow them in, but they listen. And they help in their way, with their people, doing their thing. But guess what? I met some of them. And I feel brotherhood with them. Because it's not about the color of their skin. It's about the spirit and the truth and their love of the man that I know that God has raised for all of us. So you want to claim Jesus, but you don't want to look at the reality of those who you say represent Jesus. That's why you got second and third Baptist churches, because they wouldn't let us in the first one. Yet you're mad. Why don't you let white people in? Why don't you go ask them that? God told us first, go ye not in the way of the Samaritan. So we're on our mission. You deal with God then on that. Tell them why Jesus said that. Tell them why Muhammad went to the Arabs first. Tell them why Moses only went to the children of Israel first. It's the same God today. But you've been made blind and deaf and dumb. And now we're coming up today. So we sound radical to you. Because you've never seen somebody who looks like you have life in them, because God had not made his way amongst us. We've been in the valley, but now life is springing forth. And we have a bond and kinship of brotherhood and sisterhood to one another. And that's what scares the enemy. They have thrived on our ignorance of one another. As long as you thought you were an African, and the only people you had were the people in Africa who they taught you were running around with bones in their noses. And then you learned something and said, no, 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 but our people are still only the ones who built the pyramids. That's still your only people. You've taken the positive of the negative. That's still not the full truth. You're more than Egypt. You're more than Africa. You predate all of that stuff. You didn't make the pyramids in the Western Hemisphere in some artificial way. It was the Asiatic black man who had traveled the earth, knows every square inch of it, who built signs all over the planet to bear witness to what? We were here. That's right. The thickness of our noses, the kinkiness of our hair only came about in the last 50,000 years. That's right. So those Olmec heads aren't that old. Not when we've been here trillions of years. That's right. Those pyramids predate the Olmec heads. So now what? You got people in Africa who don't have no kiki hair. Now what? You got people in the subcontinent of India whose skin is so black, you can't see where their hair starts because it's just all faded in, but they got straight hair. They're not black men. You got black men all over the planet with sharp features, not broad features. Is that not your family? Who made you cut yourself off from who and what you are? Who made you to recognize other than yourself as yourself? It was the enemy of God. And we're alive today where that ignorance has been totally done away with. That's what they're afraid of. Not that the Mexican will call himself black. No, that he'll know the truth of what his origin in the world is. That he'll look at himself and say, my God, I'm actually from God. See, they're used to Mexicans being docile workers. Right. Quiet. Right. Go and do your work and go home and don't bother nobody. Right. Now when our numbers grew and we started looking for political power, what happened? They're taking our jobs now. Now that we started building our own independent sub-cities within cities, now all of a sudden Mexicans are a threat. Now we got our own grocery stores. We support ourselves. They're afraid that you'll look and say, well, at the very least, let's support the Mexican brother and see if we can maybe start our own store now and use the same resources. That's what they're afraid of. That's why they're terrified of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, because he has gotten friendships in all walk of life, and what they're looking for is you and I to remain ignorant and divided from one another, but there's a man present. In that time frame, I'm going to close on this point. And it had nothing to do with what I wanted to talk about. All praises be to Allah. There's a prophecy, I'm going to end with this. There's a prophecy from the Hopi people that talks about the 4 different colors according to their tradition of the people of the earth. And they were all given what is called original teachings. So that at a certain point, each one of them set out in a different direction from a place where they were all made on an island. And when they went out in the different directions, they were all each given aspects of original teachings. And at a certain time, they would all come back to know one another. And they would recognize one another based off of what they hear from those original teachings that are still left at the root of the teachings. This ain't Elijah Muhammad teachings. This is the Hopis. They call it original teachings. They taught that certain part of the earth was given to the race of yellow people. And they were given mastery symbolically over the wind. Air. Interesting, isn't it? When you look into China, when you look at those people called Tibetan monks, when you look at the Buddhists, and let's talk about the avatar, airbending. There are a people who have mastered self to the degree where they can slow through breath, air, heartbeats. They can control their bodies based off of the pressure in air and change the pressure, some say, so that they can even levitate. I know spooky stuff, science. Such mastery of the breath where they can put themselves to sleep where they look dead. They've mastered that aspect. And it's not by accident that in aviation, the first real, well, we have our way in our teachings, but I won't go into that aspect right now. It's not by accident that it's in that area in the east of the yellow people where aviation, the air and the knowledge of it has taken on a form that was so far advanced that everybody else had to catch up with it. That shocked the people with the Foo Fighters. Go look it up so you'll know what I'm talking about. But we know the reality of what is fooling them. No, Foo Fighters, these are God and his angels in power with mechanisms built on earth, but it happens to be from that same area of the planet where much of this was assembled. We'll get into that at another point. To another people, to the red, well, I'll get into these first. The white people, the pale people, was given a part of the earth, and they were given mastery over fire. Now, we know from this beautiful sacred book of the Quran that there is a people whose nature and temperament, the jinn, is like fire. And when you look at this Caucasian's creation, everything has fire in it. The airplane runs on petroleum, which is what? Fire. Your cell phone has a microchip of electricity, but electricity is fire. Your car starts, vroom, but the spark plug needs fire for it to start. Everything they've made is fire. To the red people was given mastery of the earth. When you look at your Mexican, Hispanic brothers, we still work in that earth. And working it for the betterment of our people. When you found the native people here, we showed them how to live here. We experimented and knew from high civilization where to plant, when to plant, and what to plant. We knew the seasons. We knew our earth, our mother earth. That's why we have such love and respect amongst all the indigenous, because life in our very body comes physically from the earth. So we were given mastery over ourselves. To the black race of people, according to the Hopis, was given mastery of the water. That's interesting, isn't it? How will you all end up in this hemisphere? Did you walk? Came through water. Maybe not the best voyage, but all things worketh for the glory of God. When we go to church, they dip you in what? Water. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan have taught us that water is symbolic of the Word of God.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Don't we love preaching? Best preachers you've ever heard in your life are who? Not them white ones. You can like Joel Osteen's book if you want to. But don't tell me you sit and listen to his lectures. But you can tune in to Fred Price.